Okay, so we're actually ready to start implementing the timing logic that I've been rambling about so much. Let's start that with a test. Test public void should skip update if loop is too fast. Okay, now I need to create a test game here. New test game. I want to update the test, set the running values for the test game to execute the loop once. Actually, should place an equals here. I want to create a test input handler. Test input handler. New test input handler. Okay, I want to create a game loop with the test game and the test input handler. Assign that to unit and a test. It's our naming convention. This is supposed to be test input here. Test input. Okay, that's the unit under test. And now I want to, of course, run the game loop. And then in the end, I want to assert that the number of updates is actually 0, because I want update not to be called if everything happens too fast. And at the same time, in the test game, I want the number of renders to be 1. That's the exact part where I violate the condition from up here. I want the update to be skipped and the render to be executed. Okay, but this test of course fails because we did not yet introduce any timing, any notion of timing in to our game loop, and so it cannot react on the notion of too fast. Okay, as I told you before, in order to give time to my game loop, I want to introduce a timer object that I can stop away in the test. So I'm going to create a timer interface. Just going to create the interface. The rest is going to happen test driven. And then I'm going to create public static class test timer implements timer. And then of course I need to create a test timer. Test timer is new test timer. Little redundant, this language, right? And I want to hand this test time as a dependency into my game loop. Change the constructor and add a timer here. Now I have a problem because all the other tests are not compiling anymore. And I actually need some kind of default timer to pass into those tests. What am I going to do about that? I could create the test timer and set it up for every single test. And I think I'm going to do that for now. I really have to do something about the duplication in my tests, but now is not the time to do that. Introduce it and then say, okay, test timer is going to be passed in here. I'm pretty sure the duplication will get even worse as soon as I start implementing the real time logic in the tests. But we'll see about how we can clean this setup logic up a little. Okay, for now let's stick with the tests. Tests should be at the same state as before. Yes, one test failing. Next thing I want to do is actually set up my test timer, setting the times I want it to return. The first time is going to be 0. My notion of time is going to be something like milliseconds. Anyways, an integer value, because that's the simplest way to represent time, some kind of timestamp. And the second value I'm going to return here is just 1, because I assume that just 1 millisecond or whatever time unit is going to be too fast. I'm probably going for something like 60 frames per second, which means something about 16 milliseconds per frame. So 1 is certainly less than 16 and should thereby trigger the logic we just talked about. Let's create the times method, use the same trick we used before for the running values, and say this is integer times. Then I want to use arrays as list times and assign that one to values. And then I want to say this times equals new linked list of integer values, because I want to pull these values from the beginning, from the first to the last out of this list. Okay, for now that should be it. The test is completely set up. The test is not passing, so I'm going to switch over to the game loop and try to start implementing the thing. Okay, what's the timer logic? Of course, first thing I need to do is assign the timer to a field. That's easy. And then I want to ask the timer for the current time. This method does not exist, so I'm going to create it. Integer is my unit of time, so I'm going to return an int here. And now my test is not compiling anymore because my test timer is missing the method. That's easy enough to fix. Times poll, re-execute the tests, all failing except one, because they don't have timing values set up. So what I'm going to do to quick fix this for now is I'm going to put here an initial value, or something else. I'm going to put here in constructor test timer, which calls set times with, what did I say, 16 milliseconds is the default frame rate. So I'm going to return just these multiples of 16 as the default values, which should just trigger normal behavior. So non-shortcut, non-update skipping behavior. Rerun that, so the test should be fine. This is something really ugly, and I want to get rid of that really soon. But since I'm currently working on this particular test, I'm fine with fixing the other tests with this a little ugly quick fix in the meantime, and then see about how to clean that up later. Okay, so back to the game loop. I pulled the current time, pull that into a local variable, say this is previous time. Then as soon as I'm in the game loop, respectively after every round trip, I'm going to pull the time again. Timer get current time is current time, exactly. Then I'm going to compute the lag, so the time it took for the last round trip of the game loop, which is current time minus previous time. It's just a difference between the two timestamps. And then I'm going to say, okay, I skip the update if the lag is actually bigger. No, this is if the lag is bigger or equal to the 16, yes, this way around, I'm going to execute the update, otherwise I'm going to skip it. This should make our tests pass. Yes, it does. Okay, next thing is refactoring. So I really want to pull out this here into constant. Extract constant because magic numbers are ugly. Default frame duration. Well, let's just say frame duration because you cannot change it, so it's not a default, it's just the frame duration. To make it even easier to understand, at least in my head, I'm going to place 1000 by 60 here, which means 60 frames per 1000 milliseconds. So 60 frames per second. This should change nothing, right? And then to make really sure, is this a public thing? Not yet. To make really sure that our default values here pass. Sorry. That the default values here always pass, I'm going to say game loop frame duration and 2 times game loop frame duration and 3 times game loop frame duration and 4 times game loop frame duration. I know this is getting even uglier, but this way I'm making sure for now that these tests will not fail just because of some strange rounding behavior. So tests still passing, right? And I can continue on.